Welcome to the Careers by Jen podcast, episode 264. Today on the podcast, Jen talks about the importance of doing nothing. You know, most weeks I put quite a bit of effort into trying to come up with something cheeky or even mildly amusing to say about an episode. This time, that feels like way too much irony for a beautiful summer day.
You're listening to the Careers by Jen podcast. I'm your host, Jen Swanson. This is the podcast that helps you to get the job, love your work, and advance your career. Careers by Jen is a listener-sponsored podcast, and if you like the content, please consider supporting the show as a patron. You can do so for as little as $1 a month. Head over to CareersbyJenn.com and click on Support to learn more. Have you felt guilty recently when you were doing nothing when maybe you should have been doing something? Anything? Do you suffer from the shoulds? I should be doing that. I should be doing this. If you need justification for sitting around sometimes, or permission, or you need me to tell you why this is important and why you must do this, well then this episode is for you. Welcome to the Careers by Jen podcast. I'm Jen and I'm glad that you're here with me today. And before we get started on what I consider to be a really important topic for today, I have two things to share for you. And the first thing is a 5-star review from a listener. And the second thing is our land acknowledgement. So the review, May wrote, inspiring and practical career advice. I have been listening to Jen's podcast for 2 years now. It has always been a delightful experience. It has also taught me lots of good stuff. Thank you. Well, thank you, May. I'm so glad you are listening, and thanks for taking the time to leave me a review. I really appreciate it. Now, I would like to acknowledge that the Careers by Jen podcast is recorded and brought to you over the internet from the unceded and traditional territory of the Coast Salish people, including the Matsqui, the Kwantlen, and the Katzie First Nations. All right, folks, our topic today, the importance of doing nothing. Oh, now I have to admit this is very hard for me. I am a number 1 on the Enneagram, if you know what the Enneagram is. I am also a highly motivated, busy, and recovering perfectionist who always has like 7 or 17 projects on the go. I've got 2 books I'm reading at once. I've got ideas that come faster than is probably safe or wise. But I have some vacation starting very soon from my ministry position, and then I am moving into an extended time of sabbatical, which I have never had in all my 10 years of working in ministry. And so I'm excited, I'm delighted, I can't wait, I'm thrilled, and I'm a little bit nervous because one of the most challenging parts of all of it is to not fill up all of the time with activities and tasks. Because part of what I am supposed to be doing, at least 1/3 of it, is resting and rejuvenating. And there is something to be said for what is called in some circles, holy rest. Rejuvenation and resiliency and re-inspiration needs to first have downtime, time for creativity to percolate. Time for the body to recover from the constant go, and high adrenaline that it constantly has to manage. It has to do something with all of that. The body is phenomenal at homeostasis or balance, but sometimes we're not very kind to it, and we make it work an awful lot harder than it should or than it needs to. And sometimes that's actually counterproductive. It's actually to our detriment. Now, this COVID time has been that rest and that break for many of you who found yourselves stuck in isolation or quarantine and unable to work. And now maybe that wasn't a completely stress-free downtime if you were worried about money and worried about your job. But for those of us who were blessed with being able to continue to work, this wasn't a restful time at all. So many adjustments and changes had to be made, and so many of the ways we used to do things had to shift. And some days my brain felt like it couldn't take one more piece of information or one more how-to video on tech before it was going to melt into a puddle and run out my ear. Honestly, I'm sorry I'm being a little graphic there. But do you know what I mean? Have you ever felt so utterly overwhelmed that you couldn't take in even one more piece of information, or you couldn't even make one more tiny decision? Yeah. It's not good to get to that point of desperation. And thankfully, I don't very often. But this has been, as everyone seems to be saying, an unprecedented time in our history. And so for some of us, stopping and doing nothing has not been an option. Especially for those of you who have little ones at home from school and underfoot and had to figure out how to manage that and do something with them while you were trying to do your own thing. I didn't have that. We have teenagers still at home, or the other two are grown and gone. So, teenagers are quite happy to do their own thing, and they were online school, doing online school and busy on their own devices, and we didn't have to entertain like you would if they were 2 and 4 and 6 and such. So, good for you for trying to manage all of that. I imagine you might be exhausted. All right, so doing nothing. Now, some of us hear that phrase and feel instantly guilty or panicky. And if you don't, good for you. I'm glad. But if you do, there's a good reason for it. Sadly, we have been culturally conditioned. We have been culturally, especially here in the West, we have been culturally trained to buy into the myth that if you are busy, you must be productive. And if you are busy and productive, you are a success. Have you heard that? Have you heard those words? And now this might be true in some instances, but often it isn't. Being busy, and I did a podcast a few years ago about being busy, about how busy is the new 4-letter word. I think it's episode 84. I did that way back when. But being busy has become a badge of honor, and it has been for quite some time. And I have used it myself. When someone asked how I was, I would proudly say, with great glee, busy. I don't do that with the same pride or enthusiasm anymore, I can tell you. In fact, if I have to say that, I'm typically quite remorseful about it. I don't want to be uber busy anymore. I don't want to be in that high adrenaline state because I know it's not good for my body. Now, we all need a certain amount of stress. It's kind of like blood pressure. If you had none, you'd be dead, right? You need a little bit of stress. Some stress is good. Stress motivates us. Stress gets us to do our best. Some stress, a healthy amount of stress, is good for us. But the high stress, the constant go, 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 oh my goodness, there's only so many hours left in my day to get all these things on my list done, and there's not enough time, and my list is too long. That kind of stress, really, really not good. So the myth lives on. Busy equals good and successful. That's the myth. My friends, it's not true. It's not a question of being virtuous if you are super busy, and it's not a moral measurement either, although some will tell you it is. We are human beings. We are not human doings. So how often do we just get to be? Sadly, we have stressed ourselves out over the whole time is money fallacy and the you can sleep when you're dead mentality and the horrible idea that you have to work harder at the cost of your very health in order to get anywhere worthwhile. So it is no wonder that we are suffering more mental health related issues and illnesses and never before seen levels of anxiety in younger and younger people too. I was told once by a pediatrician, when your 5-year-old needs a daytimer, there's a problem. How many of us have our children so over-programmed that we've stressed them out and caused them to have anxiety, right? It's not good for us. The horrible ideas that cause anxiety and high stress and countless physical problems. This is happening more than ever it has before. It's no wonder people are trying to find escapes from the pain of it all with addictions of all kinds. It's just no wonder. And you know that when you don't have your health, it's a cliche, but it's so true. When you don't have your health, you have nothing. When you feel unwell, it's really, really hard to be productive, to be creative, to be helpful, to serve others. It's you don't have anything if you're not healthy. So what does doing nothing look like anyway? Well, it doesn't mean that you have to get down onto one of those yoga cushions and contemplate the universe for an hour, although that sounds really attractive to me and might just be amazing. But you may not be there yet. It doesn't mean that. What slowing down means is what it means for you. What does that mean for you? So just think about that for a second. What would slowing down mean in your world, in your life? And I can't see into your world, and I don't know your responsibilities and all the things that you have on your to-do list and your plate, but you do, and only you do. So what does slowing down mean to you? What can you simplify in your life? If life is a full plate of things, what can you let go of off that plate? What can you push off that plate to make it easier to swallow, to continue that metaphor? What are all these things? Are all these things on your plate necessary? Do you need to do all of those things? Who are you doing these things for? Are they all for someone else and you've left absolutely no room for something on this plate that serves you? That happens. That happens a lot to us. It happens a lot, especially to women, not exclusively, but especially to women. We have been taught that we put ourselves last and that we have to look after everyone else first. And that might be true for you. That might not be true for you. But just think about your plate. And is there a healthy chunk of what's on that plate that's reserved just for you and your well-being and your self-care? Because if there isn't, then we need to think about what's on this plate and think about that for a few minutes. How can you simplify it? What can you delegate? How can you build in some doing nothing time into your day, even if it's for 15 minutes? Even if you start off with it being 5 minutes. One of the best things that I love to do, and you've probably seen on Instagram pictures of me sitting on my deck with coffee in the morning. That is my thing. And when it's rainy and yucky, I sit in the living room. But I try for at least 5 minutes, usually a little bit longer. What I try to do is actually time it right so that I sit in the full sun with the morning sun on my face, because I have learned through my studying about sleep and insomnia, which is something I sometimes suffer with, that getting morning sun on your face, even for a few minutes, will boost your vitamin D level and will really help with your circadian rhythms and with sleep. So if you can get some morning sun in your face and just sit there, not bury your face in your phone, not be doing 15 other things, just sit there with your coffee or your tea or a glass of water, whatever it is some liquid in the morning. Do you have somewhere you can do that? Do you have 5 minutes even in your morning where you can just sit? And if you have little kids and you have stuff going on, you might even have to do it in the bathroom. But can you take 5 minutes and build up from there and make yourself a little habit of a little bit of me time in there. Here's a question for you. What can you say no to? Because whenever you say no to something, you're saying yes to something else. So what can you say no to so that you can say yes to yourself and have that downtime that your body and that your mind needs? And again, it doesn't have to be long. It just needs to be a consistent habit. Self-care is not selfish. That's another false belief. That is another myth that has been proliferated by culture and that is super unfair, exceedingly unfair. Self-care is not selfish. In fact, I talk about self-care a lot in this podcast. I also talk a lot about it in the corporate training and the workshops that I do and in the courses that I offer. And I especially talk about it in the coaching practice that I have, is that if you are not looking after yourself, you're really not going to be of service to anyone else if you neglect that piece of it, of that piece of your development. Anybody who is successful, really successful in life, has some kind of space in their day for self-care or in their week for self-care. It's in there somewhere. That it may not be labeled as such, but you investigate and you'll find that there is something. Maybe it's a walk around the block. Maybe it's just going outside and taking a deep breath of the fresh air. Maybe it's playing with your dog or cuddling your cat. Whatever it is, it's there. And so I encourage you to do it. Okay, what else can you do to help yourself do nothing? How about leaving your digital device alone for a bit? Don't take it out on that walk with you. Leave it inside when you're out in your yard. Instead of instantly putting your head down in a lineup while you're waiting for something, leave the phone in your pocket or your purse and look around. Smile at somebody, of course, providing you're not all wearing masks, which you might have to be right now. Watch people. Find something in your sight line to be grateful for, because, of course, gratitude, practicing gratitude and cultivating gratitude has scientifically been proven to be good for your mind and for your body. The phones and the devices, and I know because I too am addicted to mine, they are not helpful in the quest to doing more nothing. They are really not good. So take a break. Be present to what is actually happening and to the people who are actually around you. The world is not going to stop if you don't know what the latest news item is, or if you don't answer that text or that tweet right away. Honestly, the world is not going to stop. Just think, it wasn't even that long ago that we didn't have these devices that we are now chained to. So how can you start letting go of that a little bit? How can you give yourself a bit of a digital break? Some people even take a whole month off of social media and take a whole month off of such things. So what can you do there? Guess what? It is really good for you to get bored. I know that sounds really counterintuitive, but being bored is a really good thing. When my kids were little and they used to come to me and say, "I'm bored," I would get really excited and I would clap my hands and I would say, "Oh, good. That's fantastic. I'm so happy for you. I wonder what you will do next." I think I was pretty annoying to them when I did that, but that was my response pretty consistently. And soon enough, they'd sort of roll their eyes at me because I wasn't going to be any help. I was certainly not going to fix it for them, right? And soon enough, a new game would start, or the books would come off the shelves, or a caterpillar was being followed around the backyard, or something developed. There was never a time when I responded that way that something didn't happen subsequently, right? because the imagination would come out. And I always said to the kids that this was a wonderful opportunity to get creative. And I stand by that. I did not swoop in with 5 activities for them to choose from, because you're doing a disservice when you do that for kids. Being bored and embracing it, allowing it to be even just for a little while, is where the best ideas emerge, where inspiration bubbles up. We actually don't need to be entertained every second of the day, and children especially don't. And I really believe that we are doing them a disservice when we don't allow them to get themselves out of that state of being bored by using their own imaginations and coming up with their own ideas and games. And sure, they might need some help to get the paints out and get the paper out, or whatever it happens to be. But we don't need to fix it for them. It doesn't help in the long run. It doesn't help them as adults figure out how to motivate themselves and be inspired and get creative if we're always fixing things, right? So as adults, it's the same thing. What might arise for you if you just sit for 10 minutes after this podcast is over and do nothing? You might be surprised, actually, how much more productive you are when you do sit down to do work. Doing nothing for a while can actually increase productivity when you are working. Doing nothing and resting and rejuvenating and just being helps your body to physically recover. It helps your hormones to regulate. It helps your brain to slow down. It helps your creativity and your problem-solving skills to kick in. And it actually boosts compassion and kindness toward others. Slowing down and doing nothing for a little bit of time, or a lot of time, depending on your needs, each day can help you to be more healthy. Now, we're not using it as an excuse to not do something that you're obligated to do, right? I'm talking about a self-care practice here and time to just be. Maybe you've got a week of vacation and you've got a bunch of tasks lined up. I know I do this too, but I also am very cognizant of the fact that part of my responsibility while being on vacation is to rest and recover and come back so that when I get back to work, I am ready to go. I'm inspired. I've got lots of ideas. I've got energy, and I'm happy to be going back, right? And that's where we want you to be. And if you're not there, maybe you need to talk to me as a coach. That's the kind of thing that vacation is for. It's for building resiliency and for recharging your batteries so that you can go some more. Doing nothing might even help you to feel more happy. And we all want that, don't we? And so, my friends, thank you for listening today. I hope that you take some time, starting today, for yourself and find time to just sit or lie down and do nothing, because it really, really is vital for your health and your well-being. Well, take good care, and we'll talk to you next time. You've been listening to Careers by Jen with Jen Swanson. If you like what you heard, please share this. You know, if every single person listening today shared this episode with just one friend, our audience would be twice as big just like that. And the more people we can help with our content, the better. So help out a friend and help grow our audience by sharing this show with someone you know who would benefit from the content. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do that, and together we can make a difference. Until next time, take good care.